Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening in to the podcast this year. As we wrap up 2024, I wanted to wish you a very happy holiday season, whatever that's bringing for you, and remind you to make sure you take time for you to rest and recover so that you can have that sustainability within your clinical day. I'm really encouraged by the reviews I've been reading this year about the podcast, and I'm interested in hearing your stories. So I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe to this podcast if you're enjoying it. And please leave us a review so that we can hear your stories of transformation as you're hearing from us and our amazing guests that we bring into the podcast. Have a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year, and I will see you in 2025. Before I go, I'm going to read out a couple of the testimonials from this year, which I'm excited to share with you as you listen in and enjoy the episode today. First off is from Dr. Mama 7, who said, Sarah is such a fabulous resource for all doctors. Don't miss this podcast. Then from Family Doc Annie, thank you. Sarah shares such great practical advice for physicians looking to avoid or get out of burnout. Highly recommend. Thank you so much. Next, we have Angela Nesbitt. Sarah is a fulfilling in her mission to make it more possible for physicians to thrive despite difficult conditions. Contrary to what we might assume, there are so many people offering practical ways to help doctors thrive for the long term, and many of those people are on this podcast. I'm so happy that you're enjoying our guests, and I agree. We like to bring value and expertise beyond ourselves. HLB 2018 says, I always learn something new. Thank you so much for that review. Aram HH says, amazing guests and interviews. Strongly recommend you check it out. Thank you so much for your reviews, everybody. I will leave you there. Have a wonderful holiday season and Happy New Year. Bye for now. Because it's the holiday week, we are going to be replaying one of our more popular podcasts from this year. Happy holidays, everybody. Welcome to the Sustainable Clinical Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Sarah Smith. I am a practicing rural family physician and the charting coach. This is the podcast for physicians and advanced practice providers who are ready to step back from the busyness of their clinical day to share ideas, question everything, and redesign their clinical day. We are redesigning clinical medicine to create sustainable clinical days and create time for our lives outside of medicine. Join us for discussions with world experts who are helping design sustainable models of clinical medicine and the physicians or clinicians who have discovered or designed sustainable models of clinical medicine for themselves. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind those of you who are working on backlogs, just check in the www.chartingcoach.ca/backlog-buddies is a place you can come and do your backlog alongside fellow clinicians and physicians. So if you want to kind of hang out and have some ability to stay on task for the 2-hour sessions, come along. We'd love to see you there. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So today I have Dr. Tena Frizzle with me. This is a wonderful human that I have had supper with at least twice, which is awesome. I rarely meet the charting champions or smarter charting people in my life just because they're spread all over the States and Canada. But Tina and I bumped into each other in the Family Medicine Forum conference last year and again and the year before. So that's 2 years in a row we've met at FMF, which is super fun. So I feel like this is a great afternoon of a chat. But hopefully you guys are going to get a whole lot of just ideas on the possibility of change for yourselves. So welcome, Tina, and please introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, so I'm a family doctor working in northern Nova Scotia next to the border of New Brunswick. So a small town about 10,000 with a catchment area of 30,000. And I do family medicine. I know the cliche kind of like from cradle to grave. I literally do everything except for the emergency department. um, is what I've done. And yeah, so I've been here 23 years now, I think it is, in rural Nova Scotia. And I do, yeah, family medicine with obstetrics and some teaching as well.
Right. Oh, okay. So that's a lot of wealth of experience. And so, what was happening within your clinical career that made you kind of decide that you needed different from where you were? What was going on?
Well, I had gotten to the point where my backlog and paperwork had built up so that I felt smothering, and burnout is where I had ended up. So um thankfully I had a lovely resident who was running my office at the time, and I was, starting to work on my backlog. And I sometimes have up to 100 unsigned encounters, so visit notes open, um, and up to 500 tasks, largely the hardest ones. So the labs I would get done because they're easy, but like the
Okay.
consult letters that were 4 pages long, or the forms that needed to be done, those kinds of things, I would just sort of push to the side. And yeah, that was so burnout is what it was,
Mm,
what led me to say, okay, I need to do something different. That and the disruption it causes in your family life when you're never happy,
mm, mm. Tell me about
you
that.
know.
So, how many years into this career were you when you were kind of at this point, do you think?
So that would be about 5 years ago. So I would say like 15, 17 years
Okay.
into collecting work.
Had that always been the case, do you think? Had it always been that kind of way?
Yeah, so even in residency, I
Huh?
remember I think everybody was invited to go out for coffee before the office started after rounds,
Yeah.
and I couldn't get there. So they kind of like just kind of like not brush it off. They were like, "Oh well, you'll never get to coffee." And so that was kind of like where it was left, is that, it's too bad you can't do stuff faster. You're going to miss out.
Interesting. So back in
Uh-huh.
residency, they're all done and going for coffee, and you're doing what? What are you doing instead of coffee?
Writing my chart note.
Okay. All right. How did they
Yeah,
get theirs done?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I
okay.
I have got some ideas now that I've done charting
Now some
champions.
ideas, but it's interesting, isn't it? You're watching them go for coffee and you're like, well, when are they going to do their work?
Well, so that was just so they go and do rounds, and
Hmm.
everybody would have rounds to do on probably the same number of patients or so.
Hmm.
Um, and they were just so much more efficient at it. I think the biggest thing is they could let it go, right? Like they didn't have to have the perfect or right note. They just
Hmm.
wrote a note. Whereas
Okay.
I had to have, you know, an all-encompassing note.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
All right. What sort of things were you thinking about this then? Any ideas? What kind of would come up for you and then I'll go up for coffee and you're just kind of there?
I thought it would just get better, right? Like I thought, so I've recently been listening to some Atlas of the Heart stuff with Brene Brown, and she
Yeah.
brings up the emotion of shame. And so it's like,
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to tell anybody that that's happening. So it was obvious when they were going for coffee and I wasn't, but that was
Mhm.
okay. I just didn't get coffee, right? But I saw my patients, I did things that I needed to do. So I was respectable enough, just not efficient. And I would spend time talking to people. So
Mhm.
that was the other thing. Not people, like the patients, right, who were coming in for their problems, and I would flesh out their problems. So I would um I would get kudos kind of for you're great with patients, you have a good way of open communication, you allow people to talk. So I got lots of positive feedback, and you're caring, so I might not be efficient,
Mhm.
um, or the smartest, right? I can't come to the answer immediately, but I could be the most caring. And so Melanie um,
Mhm.
was doing some coaching with me this week on that, basically, is, what your identity ends up
Yeah.
being,
Yeah.
as a physician that has to be as good as your colleagues, right? You have to have something that you're better than other people at. So I think that propagated some of that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the kind of like threat of lawsuits or college complaints, or,
Yeah.
what if someone doesn't like whatever, kind of just keeps you going further and further into elaborating on stuff.
Yeah. Interesting that you said I wasn't as smart as because I couldn't do this as quickly. Like, was that truly an idea that your brain had about this whole situation?
Oh, absolutely. And it still persists, right? I'm like, well, I must not be as smart as other people because I can't do this efficiently.
Wow. Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting that we make it mean, and we could make it mean as whatever we wanted to make it mean, but I'm not going for coffee because I'm not as efficient, I'm not as smart, I don't think I understand the problem well enough, or whatever those ideas are. And it's just perpetuated over the years. Like you're like, I had coaching on it this week. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. This is you like on the other side of this, still being like, is there something wrong with me? Like, and I'm not picking on Tina, just so you
No.
all know. I'm just showing us that our brain is so fascinating where we notice that it comes up with these ideas on our behalf. It's just decided that the time it takes you to do a note must equal smartness. And it's not the truth, you guys. It's just made up. It's just our brain deciding that must be the truth about it.
Well, and where
Interesting.
I was going with Brené's Atlas of the Heart is she talks about shame, and she says once you speak it, it's no longer
Yeah.
hidden. So therefore it doesn't have as much, that's my interpretation of what she said anyway. It
Yes.
doesn't have as much power. And
Yeah.
and so the charting champions part and actually doing some of the coaching, I think that's part of the thing, right? Like once I realized that there was hope for me,
Mhm.
I wasn't the worst case scenario,
Yes.
and I could do this. Even like
Yeah.
before I did any of the coaching stuff like that, I just didn't listen to the intro for the modules was all I needed. And I set 2 weeks aside that Christmas. So I said, I'm going to do 1 week of work and 1 week of fun. And I'm
Yes.
going to do it whenever my family isn't doing stuff. So they usually get up later. I have, 18 and 22-year-old boys.
Mhm.
And so they're up late and I can't stay up as late as them. So I go to bed, I get up earlier. So then I would do a bunch of paperwork before they got up. And
Yeah.
I managed to get, I think it was to 0 by the end of that week
Wow.
from 500. And I thought, how did this take me, 20 years to get to 0? And it really only just took a week. Like it was just that I can do that. And one of the key things that you'd said in that intro thing, I think was, I don't know if it was then or some other time, is it's about math, right? Like
Mhm.
if I have 500 things and it takes me an hour to do 30, yeah, I don't know how many hours that would be, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so say it's 50 hours. If I could do 10 in an hour, I'm like, I can do 50 hours in a week. I work lots of weeks that are longer than
Yeah.
50 hours.
Yeah.
So I just decided, that was what that was going to be. That,
Yeah.
that week was going to be about that.
Yeah. I can
And it's
make
been
math work this week.
and it's been relieving, right? Like because now I don't have years of backlog paperwork, like literally years.
Yeah, I remember many a weekend I would bring those 3, 4, 5 dang forms home thinking I will get them done this weekend. And I would, weeks and weeks would go past. And when I finally got them done, it might take me an hour. And I was so mad at myself and the world and the patients and everything that it had destroyed so many weekends for literally 60 minutes of work. Like, and
Yeah.
and this was a repeating pattern, just like you said. It's like, why has it taken me, 15 years plus to figure this out? And the good news is it's figure outable, which is super fun. All right. So you kind of mentioned burnout. What did burnout look like for you personally? What do you think that was?
Well, I'd
What
had
is
a
it?
few health setbacks, but that wasn't enough, right? So I actually ended up, I think, with pneumonia for like 3 weeks.
Wow.
And my lovely family doctor, who'd been from my hometown and took me on, even though she was working in a homeless clinic largely, she said, "Yeah, I'll see you." And she said to me, "People do die of pneumonia." And it was kind of like, I'm human. I need to take care of myself. And so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't take that long off, but I, maybe took a week or something like that. And the first day that I took off, I was the worst. Like, I had fever and chills stuff. And I'm like, I hadn't even allowed myself to be sick in a real sick fashion, right? I'd just been smoldering this pneumonia for for quite some time. And so it hit me like a brick that I could not keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just exhausted. I remember I'd bought these little pins for some of the soccer nets at our field, 5-cent pins or whatever they were, because there were some that were rusting out. And I got out of my car and I put them on the doorstep of the shed and I walked away. And that was as far as I could go. I like couldn't walk into the field. And so I prided myself on being an active person. I remember someone said, I think it was um oh, Noelle, I think said something about she doesn't sport, but she enjoys being active outside, something like that. So I feel the same way. It's like, but when you can't walk onto the field, you
Mm-hmm.
can't do anything, right? Um, so that was, it was that kind of that and I kept harping at my kids. My oldest in particular was like 15 or 16 at the time, that I was starting to do this. And I would try to make everybody else do stuff for me because I didn't have enough time. You know, my time is so pressed because I've got so much backlog and so much stuff to do. And I'm so inefficient that I've got to get everyone else to help me do stuff. And so there may be a plate in his bedroom, right? You take it downstairs with your snack and you don't bring it upstairs. And so 3 days in a row, I'd complain at him for the same plate that wasn't brought up. And I thought, our relationship had eroded to, this conversation about a plate, right? And we didn't have any fun and we weren't doing anything because all I could think of was, I can't do one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't look after your stuff too. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, you know, here's my poor child who's, just trying to be a kid, a teenage kid.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do anything, to meet him where a normal person would, right? I was beyond exhausted. So that was the clincher for me. I'm like, you know, if this is what my relationship has deteriorated to, I need to do something. And that was actually a couple years before I did the charting champions course and
Mm-hmm.
started to get some coaching on, trying not to look after everybody else's expectations before my own.
Interesting. So, what would the clinical day have looked like if we were watching you do a clinical day back when you're in this painful place? Does it look different than now?
Yeah. So I would trudge into work
Mm-hmm.
uh, just before I had to start, sometimes 5 or 10 minutes after 9, when my first patient was booked at 9. Um, I would take 30 to 45 minutes with each person. Um, with- and I think it's because my brain was so slow, right? Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
so tired and exhausted that
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't process stuff fast enough. But I'd
Mm-hmm.
also get recurrent interruptions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, I would eat something at lunchtime, but I didn't get lunch break. I was like, so my morning would usually be booked 9 to 12. I'd be after 1 o'clock before I finished the morning. Then I would grab something to eat. Um, I would start my 1 o'clock patient late, and then I'd proceed to try and listen to everybody's problems about everything, whether or not they wanted to actually deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I would get home after 7. Um, and then I would try and do paperwork at night, um, sometime between 10 and 12, and on the weekends, and you know, whenever I didn't zone out and
Mm-hmm.
numb because I was so tired. So, you know, I still would spend like an hour scrolling through Facebook or watching a Netflix show that I didn't even like, reading a book late into the night because I felt like I deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't fair that I didn't get time off. So I was just going to take time to do whatever.
Yeah.
I would, yeah, I would do all kinds of things to avoid doing work because it wasn't fair that I was spending so much time at work.
Yeah.
So fast forward to now. Um, so now I start my day. Usually my son drops me off because he's borrowing my car. And so I get to work, sometime before 8:45. Um, I start with my first patient. I get at least a half an hour off for lunch every day. I'm actually done my patients sometimes early,
Mhm.
and I'm looking for the next person, trying to find out what to do. I haven't shortened all of my appointments to less than a half hour to 15 minutes or whatever. But a number of them I can do in that time, whereas I could
Mhm.
never do anything in 15 minutes before I get
Mhm.
lunch. I'm often home I often can leave at 5, which is
Mhm.
what I would like to do. And um, there's usually nothing urgent that I'm leaving behind. There might be some reports that I haven't read or that kind of thing. And I actually get to eat supper with my family. Whereas a few years ago, my husband said, "Yeah, I know you're trying another thing, but it never works. So, you're just never home." And my kids are like, "You're never here." And I'm like, "Well, and that's with taking Wednesday off to do paperwork before, right?" So I was telling Sarah, today I went skiing with a new friend who's visiting from Kenya, and I had a ski day, and some conversations on the phone, as opposed to sitting in front of my computer doing paperwork all day. Now I have some tasks that I'll need done, but I don't know how many because I don't care. It's not an insurmountable task. It's going to get done. Um, and so yeah, so it's like, and I feel so much lighter, right? I
Mhm.
feel like I can have fun when I'm out, not just feel guilty that
Yeah.
I'm not doing my paperwork. That's more important than my having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So you haven't dropped the number of patients you're seeing, but you are still seeing them just in a different way. So like clearly something different about your also consultation length and consultations, but you're still in the same town. You're still a rural family doctor. You're still having your Wednesday paperwork day off, but it's now a fun day or can be a fun day, which is, I think, is just incredible and a testament to the things you've created for yourself in your life, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So good. Um,
And I almost never do work on the weekend, right? Unless I'm on call,
yeah.
or I say, okay, this is the time I'm going to do it because I'm not going to do anything, all week. I'm going to do my paperwork on Saturday for 3 hours
Mhm.
because I want to do whatever with my
Mhm.
family or something like that. So
Yeah.
I actually, yeah, I get to have fun. I get to have a life.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sick.
Yeah. So there's more choice I'm hearing. You're like, I can work Saturday if I choose to, because I'm going to do this, or this during the week. Like it's now a choice. It's not a, I can't, I have.
Yeah. Before I felt like I could not do anything ever because I needed to get that paperwork done because I
Mm.
was so far behind. And it was, I was ashamed of how bad it was. I thought, someone's going to have a college complaint. Something's going to come back, and it's going to be bad news, right? Like, I'm going
Mm.
to miss something that just didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So very important. So interesting. What what had you done previously from the point of view of trying to figure this out then? I just noticed husband's comment of you've tried other things before and they've never worked. So what sort of
Yeah.
things had you kind of done for yourself? Because there's more than one way
Yeah.
to figure this out.
So I hired a nurse,
Mhm.
um, and now I have a nurse that's hired by the health authority. But at that time, I was paying for the nurse. So I hired a nurse. I stopped doing hospitalist work a number of years before I started charting champions. Um, After my burnout, um, and before the pandemic. I had started doing some coaching, like some leadership coaching stuff, and I'd looked at things like personality and
Mhm.
you know ways to do. I actually went to go see someone to see if I had ADHD. I tried 3
Mhm.
different medications. They said I didn't have ADHD, but then they still gave me a trial of medications.
Mhm.
So, and they weren't any use because I don't have ADHD. I
Mhm.
simply have perfectionism, which I saw as, writing a better note so it could
Mhm.
keep me out of trouble and going into all the problems that anybody might present.
Mhm.
So even recently I was thinking, well, my appointments are still too long. I feel great when I'm able to like keep people on track and do what I set out to do.
Mhm.
And when I can't, I feel like it's still a judgment on myself. And I realize that that's not necessarily the way I have to think of it. Um, but I'm still working on efficiency. I'd still like to do a visit and not feel like I've just been dumped on, 8 different problems that I should sort out like a Tetris puzzle, kind of all coming
Mhm.
down and you juggle things before they get to the bottom. Um, so yeah, I tried all kinds of things, counseling,
Mhm.
making longer appointments. Like I thought, oh, if I just lengthen my appointments, I give more time for people. And I know the workload expands to the time, but I'm like, I'm never running on time. So I might as well just lengthen my appointment.
Mhm.
I went from, and I had a 3-month wait for most
Mhm.
things. I would keep fit-in spots for urgent fit-ins, kids with ear infections, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I still, until I stopped charting at night, I
Mhm.
still didn't get home. Like
Mhm.
there wasn't an end to my day.
Mhm.
So the charting during the visit, um, and no matter what do
Mhm.
you say? Unless someone's bleeding, crowning, or
Crowning, seizing, or coding. Like, I don't let her off with it easy. They're really going to be sick.
and for most of us, the fear of making someone upset, of not doing what the patient needs is enough to keep us, suffering ourselves, right? Losing out and not making them sit for an extra 2 minutes to finish the note or whatever it is. So now I stop and I remind myself, Sarah says you have to finish the note. Done is better than perfect. And I'm going to finish this note. I'm going to, write the referral letter. I'm going to whatever. And it gives me a little more push to say to the person that's there, I'm still working on it, but you're booked for these 2 things. You said you didn't have anything else and you now want a referral to 3 people. Like I can't do that today. Um, and I still feel angry, right? So I'm still working on why do I, why do I feel angry that they're dumping this on me and I'm going to have more work and I'm going to run behind. But
Mhm.
but at least I'm cognitively aware of the fact that I don't have to do it, right? And
Mhm.
the more boundaries I set, the more people will respect my boundaries. Um and that it's okay that I'm human and I get to have joy and fun along with work that's productive and helpful and caring. And I don't have to be uncaring just
Yeah.
because I said I can't do that today.
Yes, yes, so important because you don't want to lose your identity as a human who wants to be helpful and caring and professional as a doctor or a physician in this case, right? So you've got
Yeah.
that. I know my values when it comes to my patient care, and I'm not losing those, but I need different than what I've got now.
Yeah. I need to not be worried that like I think someone was saying in coaching, like we can't please everybody all the time. So if our value of ourself is based on whether or not people are pleased with us, it's not going to be, it's not going to be a good day every day. Whereas if we do a good job and we know we're doing a good job, we don't have to please everybody all the time, and it's not about them. And I have um a 12-step accountability partner, Kim, and she's like, so, who's your value from? Like, if you believe in a higher being and you've got God on your side and he made you and thinks you're wonderful, like, why are you feeling like you need to do everything everyone wants you to do and you
Hmm.
can't, right?
Mhm.
Like, where's that
Yeah,
come from? Anyway, so it's good to know I don't have to do that.
yeah. that you've shown yourself that you have choice all the way around. Like, this is what's so fascinating is even as a resident, you had no choice to go to coffee because you were stuck doing this. And then I've got no choice about working until 7 because that's when I will have this day wrapped up. And I've got no choice to, go and have a fun time because I have this backlog to do. And now you're like, no, I can choose to say no to that third request today. And I'll get you back in and I can still like you. And I can say no to that today.
Yeah. I still feel bad. Like I'm still
Yeah,
working
yeah.
on
I'll
that.
still have that
Oh,
moment, that automated reaction of, oh, I should, no, no, I have choice.
yeah.
And just being more open to thinking before you are just taking that angry emotion of, no, don't keep asking me for more, and just doing it anyway. It's an interesting change. Like, it's just that little bit of a brain. We take the reaction and then we just interrogate it before we act.
Well, and you had said at some point, it's the little quits, right? Like I would get 90% done. And
Mhm.
then there'd be, I don't know, an x-ray rec or something that I would just leave open. So I'd have this whole visit open for an x-ray rec. Um, and it's like, it takes a couple minutes to finish the x-ray rec and then it's
Mhm.
done. But it's easier because we choose the thing that's easiest. And so I'm just going to quit. I'm going to leave it for later.
Yeah.
But it's not the best option. Right. And so,
Well, it's another thing added to later, which we're not
yes.
enjoying later.
No, and what did you say? Your brain is less effective the more decisions you've made,
Mm,
so I did stop constant interruptions, right? Like people know if I'm seeing patients, unless it's really urgent, they can't knock on my door and come get me. Like it doesn't matter what it is or who it is. Um, I don't have the ability to add that,
mm,
piece into my visit. Um, so that's one of the things I stopped doing is allowing interruptions all the time and um extra decision fatigue,
mm.
so I know by the end of the day I'm tired anyway,
Mhm.
and I try not to do added stuff at the end of the day, um because it's going
Yeah,
to take me longer and people
yeah,
talk longer and they're more emotional and
yeah, yeah. So very interesting. I just want to go back to, you tried a whole lot of things, and so I'm just, for those out there, because you're trying lots of things, they're all of you, to create this sustainable way. It's more about infinite possibilities. So coaching might be a tool for your toolbox that's helpful to you, and medications are important, and doctor visits are important, and counseling is important, and mentors are important, and community is important, and other people are important. Like, it is a well-rounded approach to saying, I need different than where I am right now. And it's not the belittling of these other things. In Tina's case, it wasn't her way, and that's okay. But you guys find your way, find the things that are helpful to you for your success towards sustainability. I think that um, I love just having another tool for a toolbox for somebody, right? It's that, if I can be of help in the steps of the improvements, great. And if you need meds, and your doctor and your colleagues and your exercise program, please use all of the above. We want anything that's helpful to you, right? Super important. Yeah.
well, and they were like, I have to tell you, they were incredibly important for a lot of different things. It
Yes.
just didn't help me get my backlog done.
Just didn't help with that piece.
Like at
Okay, where's
all.
that? I need to be done. That little
Yeah.
bit wasn't good going away. Yes. Okay, good. That's
Yeah.
very helpful and clarifying for people, because they might have thought, okay, there was nothing else that worked. Other things were
No,
working,
I just,
just not the number of hours this was taking.
yeah, like I still spent forever in my office and I still had this horrible feeling of dread that something was going to be
Mm,
missed.
yeah.
And the weight that I never got done work. Like I would tell people I'm never done work. I think I worked, 100 hours a lot in a week because
Mm,
I was on call as well. So I'd have, nighttime stuff. and you just can't function like that.
Mm.
You just can't do more and more work. And some of that time I obviously was looking at papers, not even reading what was, not really processing things well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, those other things were helpful. It's just I still needed to let go.
Yeah. And be brave enough to try things in a different way, different than how you'd done it right back at the very beginning as well. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you're not alone when it's been decades of the same and just not seeing a different result. And be curious about, why is this still the same? Like, things have changed across medicine, but I'm still having the same problem following me. Yeah.
Well, and I've got a link with an AI product. So I started using artificial intelligence to write my notes.
Yeah.
Um, and I have a number of things that that I've delegated to other people to do. I've also let go of some things that I was doing previously that I
Hmm.
don't need to do. So I mean, I've I've been continuing to do all kinds of things, and I will continue to do
Yeah.
more coaching to get get some, in particular, efficiency and setting boundaries, and
Hmm.
how to be kind to a patient while at the same time telling them no. You know, that's
Yes. This work in progress. And I love that you are remaining curious. It's not like, I'm there, I've made it, and nothing's going, nothing else needs to change. Now you're like, no, I'm consistently looking for further ways to help this be even better.
yeah.
Just super fun.
Yeah, very fun.
Yeah.
One
Infinite
of
possibilities is what we say a lot. Infinite ways, infinite possibilities to how to create different to where you are right now. And it's that brave to try something new, which Tina's demonstrated to you. Like, she said, okay, this isn't working, gonna try something else. Don't know if it's gonna work. Let's give it a go. Let's make my appointments longer. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, now what? Just now what? What next? Keep going, because I don't want it like this anymore. Yeah.
I had one counselor who was awesome and helped me with that piece of burnout. But she said to me one time, it sounds like you're letting people come and dump on you, and then you're walking away burdened. They feel lighter, but you feel burdened. It's like, but then they come back and they do the same thing again. Like, I was noticing this pattern, and they weren't getting any better. So it's not like this
Mhm.
was, helping them through a situation. They were getting
Mhm.
better. I simply was the dumping ground. And she said, you need to stop doing that and ask people, what's the next step in your recovery? What are you going to do next? And
Mhm.
then don't book them an appointment, and after they've done that step, they can call and book an appointment. And what happened was I dropped from a 3-month wait time to a 1-month wait time over a number of months,
Mhm.
because most people aren't interested in doing anything about their problem.
Mhm.
And I no longer could simply be there to get tired of, you know, them coming and relieving their their angst or emotional burdens or whatever. And I really valued doing that. I went into family medicine because I really appreciate counseling, and how
Mhm.
valuable that is, and how many people can't go see a private counselor for whatever reason.
Mhm.
But but learning, some of those strategies and some of those things that are not helpful, and are
Mhm.
draining,
Yeah.
was a very big thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Fascinating. And improved access at the same time. Who knew?
yes.
Crazy. Tell me about in your town, how many are working within your space with these 10,000 in your town and 30 catchment?
Oh, so I think we probably have, I haven't counted recently, but like 12 to 15 family doctors, and almost as many specialists. And then we'd have, kind of another 10 family doctors who work in smaller communities around us. So with that 30,000, the hospital admission is basically to family doctors. So we've
Mhm.
recently gone to a hospitalist model, and that was how I ended up getting bumped out, because I couldn't take on the workload of a hospitalist line,
Mhm.
and keep my office functioning. So I had to drop the couple people that I occasionally had in hospital. But the whole regional hospital is run by family doctors, basically. The emerge, the hospitalist
Yeah.
schedule. Family medicine does a lot of the obstetrics, deliveries, some of the assists for surgery. Um, so, those physicians are holding a lot together. And in fact, we also take a number of people from the nearby province, because it's 45 minutes to get to the
Mhm.
nearest regional center there, whereas it's only 10 minutes to get to us.
Mhm.
So I would say we have another 10,000 people from that area as well. And most people don't really want to go to the big city.
Mm.
They don't want to travel to get to someone else to look after them
Mhm.
for some subspecialty problem.
Mhm.
Um, so we do a lot of everything, and we refer to each other, like within
Mhm.
our community. We refer to other generalist specialties or
Mhm.
family physicians who have some expertise in things
Yeah.
for most services.
What did a vacation look like in as you were coming through the first few years of your family medicine, do you think?
Uh, I would usually want to go away in the summer for a family camp that my family goes to,
Mhm.
my parents and siblings. It's a 5-day long camp, so preferentially what I would have done is take the weekend off on either side.
Mhm.
It started on a Saturday and would go to the Thursday. It's a few minutes from my parents' house, 3 hours away, so I would like to take the next weekend off. But oftentimes I would get kind of roped into doing either right before I left or coming back early to be on
Mhm.
call, because someone else wanted to be on call. So there were anywhere from 3 of us to 5 of us on our family medicine call schedule, and we do all the neonatal resuscitations with the nurses and now the RT. The RT at that time
Mhm.
didn't participate in newborn care. Um, and no pediatricians in our area. So we
Mhm.
do now have obstetricians. We didn't when I first came to town. So there were 5 family doctors running the whole um,
Mhm.
perinatal unit. So yeah, and I remember a few years in, I had 2 lovely ladies, 2 or 3, I think it was just 2, who were you know, unfortunate enough to go overdue by their more than 10 days at the time and needing to be induced. And my family was waiting for me to go on vacation. Um, this was, I think, March break. So I
Mhm.
tried to take March break off, and this was like the Saturday of March break when we were supposed to be heading 5 hours away to visit with a few families at a place that had, an
Mhm.
indoor pool and bunnies outside and
Mhm.
lovely crafts for the kids to do. And my patients were not delivering as quickly as I was hoping that they would. They, just weren't going into labor. Despite that it wasn't their first babies, you try this and try that. Anyway, so both of them were kind of like stubbornly and in my mind, I was like, thinking you're doing this to me. And I'm sure they absolutely were not very comfortable, waiting longer to have their third babies or whatever it was. And my husband said to me, we're not doing this again. It's like we're not sitting at home waiting for you to
Mhm.
come with us on vacation. You can come or not, but we're gonna leave next time. So that was probably like, 12 years ago or so. Um, and I recognize my colleagues are lovely, right? Like they cover call with me. We share. I have a wonderful call group, right? And if
Mhm.
something happens with one of us, we're there for the other person. Um, and our families are important to us, and our pastimes, the things that we like to do. But it's that feeling like I couldn't let go,
Mhm.
couldn't go do my thing. I had to do what I kind of committed to do, even if I told them, well, I'm committed to it until this point, and then I'm going to leave. I would keep pushing that,
Mhm.
um, pushing that date or time further and further. I would occasionally miss birthdays.
Mhm.
I tried not to be on call on a birthday, but I would get home late. I would pick up a cake instead of make one. Like it was, all those sort of corners that you could cut.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the birthday present might be late, it might be money,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever I need it to do to kind of like keep the commitment to my patients, and yet try and do everything, right? Like trying to
Yeah.
be involved in community activities and my office practice in the hospital and deliveries and um, sports teams that my kids were in, you know. So
What do you think
vacation was fun once I got there
once you
because I
got
wouldn't
there?
take paperwork. But
Yeah. Now that's good. You didn't take the paperwork. What do you think that scenario would look like today? You have your three women in labor. You're supposed to be heading off with the family. What do you think that would look like now from where you are right now?
so now I take the day off before I go on vacation.
Hmm.
Um, and I tidy up paperwork and I do those urgent things that need done. And I
Hmm.
actually pack a suitcase before the hour that I should have been
In
leaving,
the car,
right?
yeah.
um, and I just went to Kenya in
Mhm.
February. I took 2 weeks. My boys and I went to London, and then after a few days in London, two of us, I took one of them to Kenya, and we had a great trip. I did not take my phone. I
Wow.
left my phone at home. I occasionally checked on my son's phone, my
Yeah.
webmail,
Yeah.
just in case there was some emergency that happened.
Yeah.
He even took pictures for me, right? So I committed to like completely disconnecting um from my
Wow.
work life.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the patient laboring and you're no longer on call and you've got somewhere to be, but she's not finished laboring? What would that look like now?
So I had someone um uh who I wanted to look after on the Friday morning
Yeah.
before I was leaving on the Sunday, right? So I give myself that Friday to do stuff. I actually
Hmm.
got a locum.
Hmm.
So then I was kind of handcuffed. They told me, so I was going to still try and do that first thing Friday morning. And I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
I'll have enough time. I'll still have some paperwork that I can do. I've got Saturday even to pack if I have things left over. Um, and then I was told I couldn't do any work and bill for it because I had a locum. So,
Hmm.
uh, so I swallowed my disappointment that I wanted to be there for my patient,
Yeah.
and passed on, through my admin and other people that my locum
Yeah.
would be there for me. And I looked forward to seeing them when I got back and
Hmm.
hearing, about their lovely birth,
Wow.
and then, thought about it a couple times afterwards,
Yeah.
and then it was gone, right? Like
Yeah.
it's unfortunately not my responsibility, and I'll look forward to hearing and
Yeah.
seeing when I get back.
Yeah. I think that's really important just to show the love and commitment you have to your patients. The I've decided ahead of time to put this locum in place for a reason so I can go and have that dedicated time off that I've allowed myself to have. And I've taken that disappointment I'm feeling and been okay with it. Just I notice it and I've decided it's going to be okay. Right. And that I'll still feel it. I'm not no longer human. I will experience that disappointment and I'm letting it go to the locum who I've chosen to take my place for the time I have dedicated to be away. Because I think that if you had come in and said, you know what, lady, you're on your own. Here's not on your own, but here's the
Yeah.
locum. I'm out. Like it wouldn't have been wrong, but it's just showing that even now that automated desire to be there is still there, but you're now showing up with a choice to say, and I'm going to hand this off like I said I would.
Well, and I'm working on the phrasing when I say, because in the office, when someone brings up another problem, my gut response is, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what you've got. And why are you doing this to me? Like, this is not fair to me.
Yeah.
And so that I I'm working with that in my brain to say, I do care. That's why it hurts, right? And I'm sorry. I have to come across not as that, sharp, bitter, because I have to do that, right? Like, I have to cut in
Mhm.
order to not be tied to that, over and over kind of thing. The sixth and seventh problem, right? Like, I'm not talking the third problem. I'm talking the sixth and seventh
Yeah.
problem. So, but recognizing that, being kind to both of us,
Mm.
the patient and myself, by saying, oh, and rehearsing it is really important, and recognizing that I'm not angry at the patient because they're suffering.
Mhm.
I'm feeling for them, and it's hard to disconnect because
Mm.
I feel so strongly that I'd like to help them through it. I'd like to fix it for them. And that I'm not trying to do, right? Like, we're not
Yeah.
there to fix, we're there to, coach and support and
Mhm.
offer
Yeah.
suggestions. But um yeah, it's come with a lot of effort.
Mhm.
Um
Yeah,
and,
it
and
is.
not just to say I don't care.
Anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk to people, let people know about?
Hmm. I think I did want to emphasize that the hope that it can get better, and the, trying to kind of like, the right word is not de-emotionalize it, but to come up with a way not to feel that emotional burden, that's that was really important for me.
Mm,
Um
yeah.
and yeah, and just that, that it doesn't have to be that way. And you don't have to necessarily say, I'm going to fire half my patients, I'm only going to work part-time, I'm going to do this and that and the other thing to block that. It's like, it's not a bad idea necessarily, um but I got my life back without actually changing much of anything other than my mindset, and the fact that I was going to commit to getting the charts done on, at that visit, and
Mhm.
not numbing, but actually
Yeah.
tackling the tasks that that I had before me to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that change is possible. I think that message of there is hope. It can be done. It may take a hot minute. It may take a lot of changing things up, but it is, if you want it, available. And I think that your story is going to help so many, because what you describe, so many of us can, oh yeah, I felt that. Oh yeah, that's happened to me. Right? So important. Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate your time this afternoon, and hopefully you all got some gems out of that one. So, all right, Tina, thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being part of the Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast. If you'd like to learn more or join us to help you get home with today's work done, go to chartingcoach.ca. There you'll find all the information on the premier Lifetime Access Charting Champions program that is helping physicians get home with today's work done, with all the proven tools, support, and community you need to create time for your life outside of medicine. We would love to see you there. Until next time, thanks for listening.